That was the sound the human body makes roughly 5 to 10 times a day, an action that signifies tiredness and boredom. And in Baki it represents a whole lot more, being the catalyst for avarice and greed, causing humanity to sin and pay the consequences as a result in the Baki Dou Musashi arc. So if you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell. Anyway, on with the video. Chapter 1 of Baki Dou is titled Yawn, a very apt title as yawning is the topic of this video, or more specifically, what yawning represents within Baki Dou. The first chapter, our first look at a world post the father-son fight, depicts one thing, Baki falling down some stairs, and you may be asking why the hell is he doing this? Well, it's because he wants a thrill. Maybe he's seeking to replicate his fall down a cliff back in Grappler Baki where he first unlocked the use of endorphins. But the reasons aside, when he hurtles down those stairs, something comes. Something he was desperately avoiding but knew was unavoidable. He yawned. As after taking part in the father-son fight, could anything less than facing the ogre himself give Baki any kind of thrill? This is the issue he faces. Even facing a world heavyweight champion instills nothing in him. In fact, he had to try his hardest not to let out a yawn as he defeated Atlas in a handful of seconds. He is unable to satiate his boredom. And well, this isn't unique to Baki. After witnessing the father-son fight, world champion Sam Atlas became bored by the ring. Protected by rules, he could not feel a thrill, and as such he seeks out Baki to fight a real fight. Dopo started his training from scratch, Jack upped his steroids, Matobe went into the mountains, the Kosho brothers trained without rest, Oliver tried once more to become #1. All the fighters of the Baki world, after witnessing the father-son fight, sought even harder to become strong, because after such an event they all became bored with the current status quo, and so each sought to reach a new level to find enjoyment in fighting once more. Yet, all find themselves yawning instead. Even running a marathon at full pelt elicits a yawn, same as taking down a famed fighter. Cross suspension bench press 100 meter dash, again a yawn. Under an ice cold waterfall, a yawn. Undergoing bone lengthening surgery, a yawn. Facing an armed gunman, a yawn. It forced our cast to do all manner of things to stop the yawn. Hanayama even requesting to face down the ogre just to stop himself from yawning. With his conversation with Yujiro spelling out all of what we've talked about, that since the father-son fight, he has been yawning, that no matter what he heard or saw, it all became boring. Before it seemed like they were in one world, but now there was a new race, an inner circle he was not part of, hence why he sought to fight Yujiro, to try force his way into that circle, to cure his boredom. And even though he was utterly defeated, Hanayama smiled, cured of his boredom. But for Baki, who had already faced his father, he'd need another cure, and that's when Musashi is reborn. That's when Baki's yawning stops. And so now with all that laid out, I want to talk about the series on a more meta level. As to me, Baki Dou is the perfect exploration of a sequel manga. And what I mean by that is that it deconstructs the concept of a story continuing on past its natural end. Because let's all be honest here, Son of Ogre feels like the end of the series. The father-son fight has always been the finale we have been heading towards. It is the completion of Baki's journey from a boy to a man. It is the natural endpoint for Baki as a series. And I feel at the time, the general consensus would have been that Son of Ogre was the end of Baki. Because for all intents and purposes, it should have been. And because of that, Baki Dou had a lot to live up to. It had to prove why it had the right to exist, why the story had to continue. And how does it do this? By, as I said, deconstructing this very concept. Yujiro is the strongest. No threat will ever come along more impressive than him. That's a fact. So the moment he fights Baki, he serves as the antagonistic force. Then all sense of power escalation goes out the window. He is the limit. Before we could have wild apes, soldiers, death row inmates, primitive men, Baki could always face stronger and stronger foes on his journey up to reach Yujiro's level. But that can't happen anymore. So what is the solution? Just say F it and make even stronger people than Yujiro just rock up out of nowhere? No, what Itagaki does instead is a work of mastery. We the readers feel exactly the same as the characters. Just like how the characters are bored because we have passed the climax of the story, so are we. The cast are bored because they witnessed the father-son fight and now cannot witness anything better. Much like how us the readers are bored because we witnessed the greatest fight in the series between the strongest father and strongest son in the world. And now we've got to read about Baki fighting world champions and falling down staircases. The story should have ended. Son of Ogre is the perfect place to end the story in a satisfying way, ending on the most exciting event the manga can deliver, the ultimate climax. But much like the characters in the story, we the readers are greedy. We want more. We aren't satisfied with a great ending, no, we just want more content. And so in story, to remedy this yawning, to keep the stakes high, to give the cast something to get excited about post father-son fight, what does Tokugawa do? He turns his back to God, aka Ujiro, since he is meant to stand as the final big bad of the series, and brings back Musashi. Musashi was dragged to the present by artificial means. It's not like Pickle where he was found in salt. No, his grave was desecrated, his corpse bisected, and his blood cells cloned. Musashi shouldn't have showed up in the story, instead he was forced to. It's an artificial escalation of the story beyond its natural endpoint. And so fittingly, the character to artificially escalate the story, in story, was artificially inserted into the world. The greed of the fighters that keep facing greater and greater challenges, even after witnessing the greatest fight in all of human history, is what caused man to commit the gravest of sins. Bringing back Musashi was wrong on so many levels. It is not ethical, it is not right. But for the sake of curing their boredom, the fighters welcome him with open arms. They don't condemn Tokugawa for breaking a taboo, and as a result, they are punished. Musashi, as I explained in this video here, is a devil from the past. His killing of Retsu is the first time a fight in the series has had actual consequences. This isn't some game anymore. In their needless thirst for a fight, they have unleashed not a fighter, but a murderer onto the world. Musashi was plucked from a time of violence and dropped here in the present, into a world not ready for him. He punishes the cast, no, the very world, for its sins of not being content and satisfied, of not letting things progress naturally, of not letting the climax be the climax. This being why the end of the arc to so many people is so anticlimactic, why Baki vs Musashi does not get a proper resolution, because neither the characters or us the readers deserve it. Musashi caused so much damage, he killed Retsu, he was a plague on the present. If Baki got a satisfying fight, the fight he was after, it would almost be as if all this damage was worth it in the end. Instead, Baki doesn't get this epic fight on par with the father-son fight. No, he resolves to kill Musashi, not to fight him. He's left unsatisfied and the world is left damaged. The fighters' eyes were too big for their stomachs. They don't get to eat the cake. And us the readers too. This is our punishment for desiring for the story to continue, for wanting more and more from Itagaki even after delivering to us one of the greatest fights in manga. Itagaki doesn't owe us anything, and so we don't get another fight on par with the father-son fight, because we too have become too greedy. As Sabako said, they knew what they were getting into, at least the general idea, but yet they did not stop. They let their curiosity, their greed, get the better of them, and released a man akin to a monster onto the streets of Tokyo. As stated, what they did was worthy of punishment by 1,000 deaths. Baki explains after Musashi's defeat that they all invited him upon them. Everyone committed the same crime. But that crime was just how humans act. The same as how Musashi just acted like Musashi. Humans are inherently sinful, we can't help but be greedy. And fighters are the greediest of them all. In those regards, maybe the events at Baki Dou were unavoidable. But in some regard, our cast have learnt from all this, with Tokugawa preserving Musashi's body, not so he can thaw him out to satiate the desires for a fight at any time, but instead so Musashi himself has a body to return to if he so chooses. And maybe this is why the following sumo arc is so relaxed, why Sukune is not an actual challenge for Baki, because they've all learned from this experience that you should be thankful for what you have. Greed only leads to ruin. That is what I think the Musashi arc comes to teach us. So if you find yourself yawning, maybe don't go straight to cloning human history's greatest warrior. It probably won't end well. And if you want to support this channel even further, then perhaps pledge to my Patreon, or consider becoming a channel member, so you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, Rinjak9696, Mr. Sputum, and Matthias Rowett. So with all that said and done, I have been Seth the Sin, the deadly sin of geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.